welcome to Cancer Book Club. It's now September of 2018, and we have with us today, I'm privileged to have with us Scott Baker, who is the author of No One Rises Alone, the story of his survival of 4 different cancer occurrences. And Scott will tell us more about that, but it was lymphoma, which ultimately went to his brain and had many really harrowing treatments as a result of that. So anyway, so myself and Pat Wetzel from Cancer Road Trip, we're going to be talking to Scott today about his book and his experiences.
Thank you so much for having me, Robin.
Yeah, so it's so lovely to see people in person.
Yeah,
having read their books.
It really is.
You look great. I mean, you look really good. I mean, there are many parts of the book you talk about losing 70 pounds and stuff like that. But
well, I've gained about 65 back since my last cancer.
Wow. And is that through like you doing weights and all that stuff?
I do. Yeah, I work out a lot. I have to.
Yeah. I remember you. It's a big part of your identity. I remember you were saying.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I guess that kind of leads us into the first question that we had, because if you don't, you can remind us and the audience the ages at which you had your recurrences. But my recollection from your book is that the very first time you were a young adult, the last time was you were a married man, father of 2, and totally different places in your life.
Very different.
So how old were you at each of the times of?
When I was first diagnosed, I was 29.
29.
And boy, it came as a surprise because I just thought I had an ulcer. So I had no children yet. In fact, we weren't married yet. My wife was my caregiver then too, along with my dad and my mom. But then we got married a year later after I was first treated. And then I recurred in 2006. I was about 35. And by that time, we had a 3-month-old and a 2-year-old. So that was a different perspective.
Yes, totally.
And particularly for my wife, because she was a caregiver now, to me and the 2 little ones. So
right,
really
small children is a whole other ball of wax.
Really difficult.
And then your third was, how old were you for your third recurrence?
I was 42.
And then your fourth was?
Well, I was still kind of 42. I recurred immediately.
Yeah,
I turned 43 in the hospital.
Right.
During my
I remember that.
I turned 30 in the hospital too. But they let me go home that day. It was like it was a goal I had, and they let me go home my 30th birthday.
Which
I was in the hospital for my 42nd.
But
ultimately, they kept saving my life.
Were these all the same cancer, the same type of cancer?
It was the same cells. It was diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, CD20 positive every time. The first 2 were in my abdomen, and then the 3rd and 4th were in my brain. So the first time it was right frontal lobe, and then it was a deep brain diffuse tumor, which blacked me out for 3 months.
Wow. As a 43-year-old going through this, if you could go back and talk to your 29-year-old self, what advice and what perspective would you give him?
Well, when I got sick, it was a surprise. I didn't say, why me? That's for sure. I thought, why not me?
Yeah.
I think the mistake that I made ultimately was when I got remission, I think I took that for granted in hindsight. And I went back to living my life. We did have a couple children during that time, but I would say I was wound up a lot. I was I don't know why I was wound up too tight. And I went right back to that. And I think that was a huge mistake. And then I had a recurrence, and it got my attention for a little bit longer. But then, after 4 years, I started sliding back to that. And then I got the brain cancer, and I really thought that was going to be my answer. And that's why the very first chapter of my book is called The Answer, because I'm like, wow, this is going to be the answer. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I just knew this was going to be the experience that was going to get through to me and really change the way I looked at things. And I
So
would
the advice you would give is not to be so, not to take remission for granted and to
exactly
really invest in a healthy lifestyle.
or any single day, really.
Yeah.
You know, I think, that's what we do. I think when we're young, we take things for granted.
Well, we're all immortal, right?
My
When
kids
we're
do it
young.
every day. So I did it, and then I wasn't so young, and I was still doing it. But I eventually found my way through all these experiences.
Well, how have you changed your lifestyle?
Well, I think I live a healthier lifestyle for sure. The big thing, I was always into fitness. I got way more serious about nutrition in terms of just a balanced kind of diet. I eat less. The exercise and the nutrition are the easy parts, but maintaining what I call inner peace, just being okay every day, is always the hardest part. I've got two young, they're still young, they're 13 and 12. We're really busy and you're running around, and I'm kind of in low gear, which I think is frustrating, particularly for my wife. But it's how I have to be, because I have a certain amount of brain injury from the cancer and the treatments. And if I'm rushed and I'm in a big hurry all the time, I'll forget my head if it isn't attached. I'll forget everything. So, which just causes more stress. You're on the way somewhere and you forgot things, and now you're late. So I just take things slower. But I also have a very different outlook on the world. Very different.
When reading your book, you're describing your first treatments with lymphoma, and that has a young man that you were so into fitness and weight training and getting strong and so on. And I can relate to that because I was that way myself. That you thought that, if I can only just get back to exercise after, that will be the salvation. So I'll exercise like crazy before, I'll have treatment, then I'll exercise like crazy after. And like me, only to find that you can be a fitness god and it doesn't matter, you're still going to
Who's been there, done that?
yeah, exactly.
But I'm not giving up on it. I still
no, it's still part of a healthy lifestyle, but it isn't it isn't a cure, it isn't a panacea, it isn't a guaranteed protection.
Unfortunately, no, but I do think it helps tremendously.
No question.
I agree.
It helps in your recovery and in your emotional well-being.
Totally.
I think that's the biggest thing, maybe. Just your emotional well-being improves because you're moving.
I agree. And I think being physically strong makes you feel better. I personally think exercise, it's not a guarantee against any recurrence, but it is almost a panacea in that you're healthier, your metabolism's better, your mind is better, emotionally and psychologically, you deal with things better. It makes a massive difference, I think.
And if you do recur, it makes you better able to withstand the treatment.
Exactly. Yes. Yep.
So another question is that, one of Pat, you're a lymphoma survivor as well, correct?
Well, I live with lymphoma. There's kind of a difference.
Yeah. So you're exactly but lymphoma was your index cancer.
Yes.
Yeah. And so when we were talking about this interview, one of the questions we had for you, Scott, was around your connections with the broader lymphoma community, and whether you found that, I read in your book how you did ultimately at the end of your journey become quite involved with the community, do runs and other things to support them. But I'm just wondering, because you had such a rare form of lymphoma, because going to the brain it's uncommon, relatively speaking, in the world of lymphoma. If you felt kind of alone or isolated within the lymphoma community, or how did you cope with the rareness of your cancer?
Well, I felt very alone. That's a good word. And I was scared to death. My first move was I looked at medical journals, whatever I could get up online. And every single journal said the prognosis is dismal. They all said you can expect to live 12 to 18 months with treatment. and I just kept digging. I eventually stopped. I couldn't take it anymore. My
Oh,
boys
yeah.
were 7 and 5. So I just didn't think, like, I didn't think this can be the end for me. I was 42. I'm like, nah, this can't be. I couldn't read anymore. And then my little boy just said something to me that gave me an idea somehow to type in PCNSL survivors. And instantly, I met a man that was a 10-year survivor. And he had CNS lymphoma 4 times. And I was in contact with him within 24 hours, emailing him. And he had a support group called the Brain Trust. And all of a sudden, instantly, I was meeting people all over the world that had CNS lymphoma, had survived it, or were dealing with it, or their caregiver. All of a sudden, I wasn't alone, and it changed my entire outlook.
There
Very
is,
quickly.
we say this all the time, and this is kind of why we do Cancer Book Club. There's absolutely no substitute for that. No doctor or nurse can help you as much.
Sure.
Well, they can help you, of course, obviously, but not to this emotional, in terms of the psychosocial survival. That talking to another survivor of your same disease, same stage, whatever, there's nothing that comes close to that as far as this is making you feel better.
Literally from when I met this group of people, instantly to me, I was going to survive. Because now I knew it was possible. Where before, these articles weren't indicating that it was possible.
Oh no, Dr. Google gave me 5 years 9 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, this is it. It's so, as we know that the research studies that are often available online are, often 5 years old. And so they're talking about 5-year-old data, and they were 5 years. Usually those are patients from 10 years ago when the technologies weren't as sophisticated. Because from what I read in your book, you had very sophisticated technologies applied to your treatments.
Yeah,
stem cell
I would say
transplants.
once I got to Sloan, I just knew I was in good hands.
Yeah, you have amazing things to say about your caregivers in hospital and how great they were. Like all these Danielle, all these people who are just like God's gift to humanity and just totally changed.
That's exactly what they are.
Yes.
I just felt, I literally was sitting in the hospital, never feeling like I didn't think at all about what I had lost. I was amazed at the people that were walking through my door.
Yeah, that's one of the things I took away from your book is when you're saying how you would wake up in the morning, even though you were like in isolation in the immunity ward and all that, and you'd go, this is going to be a great day because I'm going to meet somebody great. And then you did. Like one kept coming into your sphere, and that was really lovely. And so, in a way, I'm trying to take inspiration from that myself even now. Sort of, it's a beautiful day out, it's a great day, even though
it turns out that you can decide it's a great day.
Though
and I have some really tough times.
You feel like death come over. You can barely go, brain cancer. Really the ultimate optimism. When you think about it, it's almost like a Monty Python sketch. I'm not dead yet.
Although there were a few minutes where I thought it was the end.
Yeah, I remember you. I remember
probably a couple of hours. I was 100% sure that was my last day.
But then someone said, no, that's not.
Tanya walks in the room, and that was the end. After that, I was going to survive and walk through the door.
And here you are. Like here you are talking to us.
Yeah. Now that was, over 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago.
So another question we had, you are our first brain cancer interviewee. So, we've talked to lots of people who have cancer in various body parts and how that is the body part location is relevant to their self-body image and their coping and so forth. The brain is a whole other can of worms though. Like we're not talking about your, breasts or shoulders or legs or whatever. We're talking the center of your identity, like the core of everything. And your book does a great job of describing the terrible disorientation that went with that, the memory loss, the dislocation, getting lost, physically lost quite a lot. Yeah. And so I wondered if you would like to comment some more about, in your view, what makes brain cancer uniquely challenging?
Well, the uniqueness really is that you're disconnected. there were parts of that battle that I was completely disconnected from the world. I felt like I was making sense inside of me, but I wasn't relating to other people. They didn't. I probably looked like I was crazy, and I was lost. I was getting lost walking 10 feet to the bathroom in my room. So, but I always had somebody to help me. So that's why I'm like, okay, you know, I learned to ask for help, which is something that's very hard to do for a lot of people,
Of course.
including me. But I learned that that was the only way to get through. I had to acknowledge that I needed help. And it turned out that was probably the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Understanding that I need people. And also understanding how much I appreciated the people that helped me. And that makes me desperately want to help other people.
Yeah, good for you.
I know the value. I've experienced the value of it. Simple little things sometimes, but tremendously helpful. But that was really hard. And, you know, it was weird because I was a grown man who was walking around with a lot of fear. I was scared to death because I didn't know where I was a lot. And in New York City, that's, you know, it was, you know, and I insisted on, I would walk like to a Freesis from the hotel during the week of Thanksgiving in 2012. And it was like, I think it was like 1.75 miles or something. And I figured it out, but it was frightening. But the streets are numbered, so I could figure out how to get there. But it was like, it was so scary. But I think it forced me to put myself back together. It helped me put my brain back together.
It would be like being suddenly transported to a foreign country or even a foreign planet. Like,
Yeah.
I don't get, what is everybody saying? You know,
And just, it moves so fast. I was so unstable. Stepping off a curb was scary. Certainly walking upstairs was horrifying. Just
do you
because
mean in terms of balance, or do you mean in terms
my
of
balance
the
was
perceptual?
a little bit of both, but my balance was really poor. So, I mean, for about 1.5 years, I was scared to death of a flight of stairs because I could just imagine tumbling down. And then if I break something, I'm not going to be able to stay mobile.
Right.
And I thought I'd fall apart emotionally. So, I mean, I was literally scared of a flight of stairs for probably 1.5 years.
But it seems to me, I don't know, I'm a psychologist in my day job, or I was before recurring and being off on disability. But you know, in some ways, that's the brain trying to protect itself. Be afraid, be afraid. Sort of like blind people. Don't you be super careful in where you're moving because you can't see where you're going. So it'd be like your brain makes you afraid because it wants to keep you safe.
And it slows you down.
Yeah, it's actually trying to be your friend, even though it
Yeah.
feels like your enemy at the time.
No, it was okay. I just, you know, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard for people to imagine that was all a good experience.
No,
It's not. It's
it's
not.
not.
And cancer.
I thought it was, though. You know what I mean? Like it changed me in ways that I wanted to change anyway, I would say. You know, which I'm thankful for. But the thing is, we were always going for a cure. And that's a very important point to make, is that in my mind, I'm going to be cured. I'm going to get through this. This is temporary. So all I have to do is stay focused and get through this, and I'm going to see a better day. And that's an important part of my story.
By the third time, do you find that your resources are a little bit more diminished?
In terms of what?
Just psychologically, your ability to say, we're going to cure it this time. Going through this 3 or 4 times, depending on how you kind of want to count the reoccurrences, is not an easy thing to do.
No, I just felt, I felt like I was so young. I just didn't think that was the time to go out. You know, my boys were so young. I just felt like this was something put here to get my attention. And that's the way I looked at it. And it made it easier because it was temporary and it was supposed to teach me something. In my mind, that's how I was viewing it.
One of the messages I took away from the book was your tremendous patience. You know, the patience you have to with your body, with your brain, with your fellow man, with the whole thing, that to know that this was going to be years and years of recovery, not months, not days. This was going to be a super duper long term thing, but you sort of
Yeah.
never lost focus on the fact that
Well,
one day it would be behind you.
that's interesting. I remember walking through a parking lot, going to get something to eat with my little guy who was 6. And he looked up at me, and it had been months that I'd been home. And he said, "Daddy, do you think you're going to get better? Like, when do you think you're going to start getting better?" And I say, "You know what? I get a little bit better every day. It's just hard for you to see.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get there." And it was a great opening, because I'm like, that's why, everything you do is going to take hard work and patience, and it's going to take time. Nothing is like a light switch.
Yes.
It takes time, and you just have to have patience, but you have to do your part and do your job. And that's just what I kept telling myself. To this day, I still have to. I'm not 100% by any means, but.
Are you working? You working full time?
Yeah, I work 90%. I get paid 90%. At times I work full time, and at times I volunteer with the Livestrong program still. So like right now we're back in session. It started this week. So twice a week I leave at lunchtime and go and do that. And that's really why I stay part-time, really, so I can participate in that program, because it means so much for me from both sides. I was a participant, and I felt like they really pulled me up off the floor, and now I get to do that for other people. So it's one of my favorite things I'm just not willing to let go of.
Yes. Yeah. That's great that your workplace is that accommodating and flexible around.
Well, yes. It's been amazing what they've
Yeah.
done for me.
Yeah.
Because in all honesty, that was my occupational therapy. I was scared to death to go back to work. I knew I had to do it because I had plateaued. My brain got like better, and then it stopped. And I said, you know what? If I go back to work, maybe that'll be a good thing. And it turned out it was the best decision I ever made, but they were very patient with me.
One of the things, I went back to work after my first cancer 8 years ago, and and the reason I was inspired to do that, it was I watched a medical doctor who had it was a very late stage breast cancer, saying, she had 2 little children, and she said, people say to me, well, forget, just stay home with your 2 little children because you haven't got that much longer to live. And she'd say, but that's telling me I'm going to die, where if I go back to work, it's acting as if I will live. And she did live.
Yep. You have to make choices that are best for you and your own emotional well-being, whatever that is. And it's different for all of us, but that's what I think you need to do. Yeah.
So, this leads us to question number 4. What would you say was the most difficult part of your cancer experience, and what was the most uplifting part of your experience?
I would say, well, the most difficult part was just being disconnected. It was strange, but I have a story in the book that's called Tougher Times Ahead, which would be hard to believe after what I just told you about my experience in isolation. But when I got back out into the world, because, they're doting on you in the hospital, and they were gone. And now, I was on my own, and my boys were 8 and 6, and I had to take care of them. And I was 30 seconds again. I kind of went backwards because of the drug cocktail that they used for the transplant. They all penetrated the blood-brain barrier and got into my brain. So I think, it caused confusion, and the doctors weren't sure if that was the disease or if it was the treatment. And I kept telling them, no, it was definitely the treatment, and it's definitely going to get better. They certainly hope so, but it's what I believed. I just knew I was right, because I was much better before the transplant, and then it really went south.
Yes.
But then when I put my boys on the bus come September, I walked in the house and I was like, okay, I need somewhere to go. So I started the paperwork to go back to work. I was scared to death because I didn't want to prove to myself that I was disabled. I was 43. And I just didn't know how I'd handle that. What if I can't do it? What if I can't contribute? And my boss really, he really made sure he gave me work that I could
Yeah.
do, and then it progressed and it got
Yeah, I
better and
remember
better.
those feelings very well about, fear of return to work, but the desperation to return to work at the same time. I
Yeah.
still even have that now, even.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so it's
And it,
just,
I'm still putting the brain back together. It's a process, but I've come a long way. So I feel good about it. I'll get there.
and what was the most uplifting experience you had
So
during?
absolutely the time at Sloan. I woke up, like I felt like I woke up from a coma that September 13th, 2012, when my wife was packing the bag, and I didn't, must have been strange from her perspective. I wake up and I'm like, where are we going? Well, good grief, you were just at Sloan for 10 days and now you're going back. I didn't remember a second of it.
Hmm.
But when I got to Sloan, I had all these people around me that were looking out for me. It was like I woke up in a different world. There was a man that he made sure I ate every day because he knew I wouldn't remember to eat, which I wouldn't. He checked on me for all 7 weeks that I was there. I mean, he would always check on me 3 times a day.
Is this a provider or another
Well, he
patient?
was actually the husband of a woman that was my roommate when I was blacked out. My wife got to know them, and she had the same disease. And that was just one guy. He was just a caregiver to his wife, and he was always looking out for me. And then just all those people I write about that came through my door who were looking out for me, it was an army, literally an army of people. Each of them did something different, but they gave me exactly what I needed when I needed it.
It's interesting to hear you talk about the quality of A, healthcare, and B, ordinary people who are sort of in your path, because when we're doing these interviews, we talk to people who've had the exact opposite. They've had terrible healthcare. They've had, the referral got lost. The people in their lives, all abandoned them when they were too ill to relate to them in the old way. We've heard a variety of stories. So you're super fortunate, or part of
Yes.
it would be your perspective too, but super
Yeah,
fortunate.
it's a little bit of both. Very
Yeah.
fortunate though. Like I remember when I woke up, according to my journal, because it was dated, because I don't remember, but when I was having my transplant, it was actually New Year's Day. I had no idea. And I wrote one sentence, and it was, I'm going to write a book. And I wrote a book because I had to share these experiences. And it was 2 things. It was the idea that no one rises alone, that we need people,
Yes.
and the idea of what almost dying taught me about living, because I live a whole different way now. At least I hope I do. I see the world differently, and I think I respond to the world differently than I used to.
One of the things I thought of when I was reading about it is that, you were talking about these people giving to you, but I also read about you, even at your most benighted, pulling them in too. So for example, when Danielle comes to your room and she's like, oh, my silly problems don't matter. And you're going, what silly problems do you have, Danielle? You asked her that. Here you were.
Yeah. Well, I had all the time in the world.
What was your deathbed? And here you are asking questions of other people and bringing their stories to you. So, what great. so,
Yeah, well,
probably harder on yourself than, well, I'm sure you've heard that, than you do.
Well, it's an honest tale.
Yes, very honest. It was very honest. It was very.
I just think, like I said, I was looking for it to be the experience that changed my life. And so, I was reflecting a lot on how I lived my life. And I saw what was going on around me, first of all. And I saw the people that weren't doing as well as me. And I said, I've got to do better. When I get through this has to be the thing where I go on to live a better life and do more for other people. Because how many chances can I get?
After four's pretty good.
I tell the story of my roommate when they came in and they told him he was going to hospice. And I was sitting up because I was just getting up for a walk and I had to stop and wait. And I listened to him. He was 5 feet away from me. I was behind the curtain and they told him, there's nothing more we can do. You're going to go to hospice. And I was just devastated because I'm like, how can I be healed a fourth time? And this man, it's the end for him.
That's
And,
the whole topic of survivor guilt, right? That
oh, absolutely. And I still have that. I mean, when I go to services these days, which seems like it's more and more, I guess I'm getting older, so that happens. But those poor people console me more than I console them, because I have these feelings when I go there, particularly if it was cancer, and it's just so sad to me because I feel like, how do I get to live? And this person didn't get this chance.
well, that's why you're earning your remission, right? You're earning your remission by working with Live Strong, and you're earning it by the work you do and the book you wrote and the outreach you do. So, many of us who live despite the odds feel, well, we got to do something with the time we have left, knowing that
Yeah.
that can change. So that we throw ourselves into caring for others, and Pat doing her road trip and all these other things to kind of open the world's eyes and give back to the world in some sense after our calamities, So
Shame on me for taking 4 shots over the head, though.
yeah,
I mean, it
well,
took
at
a
the same
long
time,
time.
though, that when you're raising 2 small children, it's not easy to kind of go and do a bunch of volunteer stuff or whatever. So it's there's all that developmental
Yeah.
piece to it, which is why we asked you those questions.
Yeah.
The next question, the final question I had, we can, well, it's not the final question necessarily, but what did you learn about being an advocate in your own care?
Well, it's absolutely mandatory. You're in charge of your own health care. I mean, sometimes it's sad to say, because I talk to people a lot that are very, very sick, and they need an advocate. All right. They need a really good advocate. I had my wife. I was blacked out completely. She got me where I needed to be. It was not easy. I don't remember any of it, but then I got to kind of live it through my roommate and friend, Jack. I watched his daughter advocate for him that entire week. And I was laying there in the bed next to him thinking, this is what my wife went through.
Yeah.
This is what it took for her to get this done, get another diagnosis and a good treatment. And I learned a lot from that. And then when I got out of the hospital, I still have my health issues, and I have to advocate constantly to get the care I need. And I also talk to people every day of my life that are going through it, usually just through texting and messaging. But
Right.
so I hear all these stories, and they're moving toward a patient-centered system where now it's sort of disease-centered. Oh, you have lymphoma, this is what we're going to do. You have breast cancer, this is what we're going to do. Instead of having a conversation saying,
what do you want?
This is, what do you want? This is what's possible. This is what we think we can give to you. This is what the price you're going to pay for it.
Right.
What are you willing to pay in terms of quality of life? And you need to really understand that and have a conversation. And your caregiver needs to be in on it, and you have to all be on the same team. That's really, really important, especially now because things are changing so fast. It's not cookie cutter anymore. They're realizing
right. There's more genetic biomarker stuff.
Right. So they've learned so much. It's not. There's a lot more. You have to be very, very involved, or have someone who is. And it's sad to me. I meet people all the time that they just simply don't have that. They don't have, an advocate that can understand. It really helps if you have somebody in the medical community because they understand the language. That's really good. My wife wasn't, but I called her my pit bull because she was going to get the care that she thought I needed, and she did it. And it was not easy, I'm sure. But she did it.
Well, kudos to her, and you've got to give her our best. That reading the book, it was clear that she was, behind the scenes, working like a Trojan in all respects, raising the boys, doing the housework, filling out the forms for insurance, doing, and persuading you to go to Sloan in the first place. All these other,
She did all that. And a lot of friends helped her with the kids and her parents, and she had a lot
Yeah.
of help. But
Yeah.
it was, I mean,
it takes a whole community to.
it really does. It's people say it all the time. When one person gets cancer, the whole family gets cancer. But it's beyond that.
Yeah, the whole neighborhood gets it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're fortunate enough to have a community that rallies behind you.
Yeah.
I was really, really lucky to have people that helped me. That they pulled me up.
You were
Changed
fortunate.
my perspective.
Sorry,
No,
Pat, you.
No, I think you were fortunate because I think the experiences are all over the spectrum. Some people have nobody and
Right.
very little assistance, and other people have communities rallying around them. So I think you were really on the very lucky end of the spectrum.
Yeah, by all means. But I really feel for the people that have no one because they exist. It's a reality. And that's where I think healthcare they've got to do a better job for those people. Because they get kind of left out, I feel like.
And going back to something you said earlier, I don't know that healthcare does or can prepare us for what the quality of life is really after treatment. They don't really know. It varies on an individual basis.
Right.
But chances are your quality of life is not going to be what it was.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's, almost, I hate to say almost always, there's going to be some differences that you're going to have to get used to. That's just a fact. There's things that I live with now, the fatigue. I have chronic pain because I have neuropathy in my spine. There's different things. I forget things. But overall, I have to sit back and think about everything I can do every day.
Now,
And I'm doing really well.
I have to pass along one hint about the pain because I've had some joint issues as well.
Yeah.
And I recently met somebody who uses sound therapy on acupuncture points. And I've had very good response to acupuncture personally. So the idea of using these highly precise, calibrated tuning forks on acupuncture sites to combine the energy of sound and acupuncture intrigued me, and I am getting great results with it. So I passed that along for whatever.
Do you have neuropathy? Do you have neuropathy?
Well,
no, this is actually not necessarily directly cancer related. I have some other joint issues, although all my joint issues just came out of the blue right after the last round of chemo. I mean, nothing in my body functioned right again. And this is just, I'm having great results with it. So if you're curious, I'll, send you some information.
It's interesting that you say that.
Area.
I just started seeing a pain specialist, pain management doctor, which I kind of, for some reason, resisted because I thought all he's going to do is throw more pills at me.
Yeah, yeah.
But he knew from our first conversation that I'm just not into that. I mean, I do use gabapentin. It's mildly effective. But my second visit was Friday, and he's switching over to something like that, where there's going to be a trial period where they tape it to somewhere in my neck area, and it uses sound. And if it's effective, they'll implant it.
Wow, that would be great.
Wow.
So I'm going to go for that because, the pain it simply wears you out.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's very fatiguing, very fatiguing.
It really is, yeah.
And demoralizing too, and that's another whole.
Well, it makes it so it's hard to focus. It's very hard to focus when you're in pain all the time.
Well, no question. We've been there. We've both of us been there. No question.
Yeah.
The other question I ask every author that we see, is there a question that you would like us to ask you? And if so, either about the book or about your experiences, what do you wish people would ask you about your journey?
Wow, I never thought of that. It's interesting. People always ask the same question. How did you do it? How could you possibly be told you have cancer 4 times and stay positive? And my go-to answer was always, well, I never did it alone. And so
hence the title.
That's one of my biggest messages is that we need each other. I mean, look at I always point to 9/11 and the superstorms and the hurricanes, and people rush toward the problem to help perfect strangers. They put everything aside and they run to the problem and they help perfect strangers. And I always think, geez, why don't we just do that every day? That's like a big reason I wrote the book, was for that reason. You know, I just had all these people coming to help me, and now I'm just dying to help people. I'm just dying to help other people because I know the value of it. And you know, that's one of the, I guess, the biggest messages, other than the, you know, advocating for yourself and how you might think about things to get through cancer treatment, because it's, as you know, it's very difficult. I try to give people ways to think about it so that it's just a little bit easier each day. You know, just celebrate every little victory. Like, I mean, I'm sure you've experienced the first time you could taste food after a year and how exciting that is. You know, a little tiny thing, you tasted something and it's just
Pizza, pizza. Pat and I talk about food a lot.
Whenever I eat out, whenever I find a great meal, I always put it on Twitter for Robin.
Yes, yes. And I always like drool. I have Twitter drools.
Oh, I mean, who really appreciates it until you lose it?
Yeah.
Well, exactly. Or, you know, there was a period there last fall where I was on big infusional drugs and I couldn't even, couldn't even take really even water. And I remember reading that part of your book too. But when you can't even swallow because your mouth is, your mucositis is that bad. My mouth was like one big sore, one ruinous sore. And, you know, I went to see, but, you know, back to the messages of hope. And when I went to see my dentist a little while ago, she looked at my mouth. She said, you would never know that your mouth was horrifically traumatized only months ago. It's perfectly normal now.
Yeah. So you went through that too. That might have been the worst thing that ever happened to me, that mucositis.
Oh, it's terrible. It was terrible. It was terrible.
Awful.
It was, you know, to be deprived of being able to eat is, you know, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's depriving you of one of the most foundational pleasures there are in existence, which is to.
But the pain, I mean, the pain was unbelievable. I couldn't swallow anything. I just couldn't swallow.
Right.
For weeks. That was rough.
And I remember in your book, you were telling me when you were in the Hope Lodge or whatever, that afterwards that people would have to were like practically ready to intubate you because they couldn't, you and your fellow patients in the lodge were like, can we, maybe we could you know, slip him some sugar water or something, anything to get something in him.
Even that was such a great experience. Like, it was like I had a cheering committee. They wanted me to eat more than I did. You know, there was the guy, Dave, that made me my first little tiny quiche. I took a few bites and and it was like people were cheering. It was a big deal. How great was that, though, to have that? You know, I had all these perfect strangers that were excited that I was eating. You know, it was amazing. But they were going through the same thing, a similar thing. So they understood. You know, it was just amazing.
Well, and I guess that's kind of where, you know, things like Cancer Book Club come from. Like, we understand in our way because we've been there or been in similar places, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, all of these things. And so that's why we do Cancer Book Club, because we love to invite people who you had a story and have reflected on the story to the point where they've actually written a book about it. And that, you know, these are people who've really examined their experiences and are you know, front and center with some of the messages that are worth sharing with all cancer patients, which is, you know, it isn't always going to be at its, you know, there's, you know, and even for people like myself who are terminal, like it's, you know, there's still something good to be done. You still have some good things you can do for other people. Before
you're doing it.
Yeah.
You're doing it. It's amazing what you're doing.
Yeah, no, we were really pleased with it. We love this work, and we love books, we love literature, we love all that. So we won't just review survivor books. Well, we do, but we all do movies and talk about TV shows and other things that sort of bring the cancer experience to light, and just talk about it through the lens of people who've been down the road.
It just feels good. Like, I still read other people's books, other survivors. And I'll read page after page. I'm like, yep, you know, I couldn't agree more. But it still feels good even to have a community of people that maybe they came around to the same way of thinking.
Yes, yeah.
I don't know if it reinforces it or whatever, but I enjoy reading it. I enjoy reading the other stories.
Yeah, well, we do it every month.
I know.
So we,
I know.
we're, and so we really, it's something that I pretty much always got a cancer survivor book on the go. And
Yeah.
anyway, it's definitely it's an eye opener. All our cancer experiences are different. They involve different
Yeah.
body parts and so
Yeah.
on. But many of the thematic things are the same, like fear of recurrence, mortality issues. What about our children? How do we manage that? How do we manage marriage and friendships and all these other kinds of things? So anyway, I think we've kind of pretty much come to where we need to close for today. So I really want to thank you, Scott, for joining us. It was a great privilege to talk to you. It's very, very inspirational, and I'm
Thank you.
hoping that.
Thank you so much.
So
Thank
we're gonna.
you.
So our next step is to put this interview on our replay page, and feel free to kind of tweet that out, and we'll do the
I
same.
will.
And we just wish you all the very, very, very best in going forward, and maybe we'll stay in touch through Twitter and
Absolutely. And
Absolutely.
thank you very much.
Thank you. And I certainly wish the both of you the best. All the very
Likewise.
best.
We're having
Keep
fun.
going. Keep moving forward. Keep helping people. You're doing great work. Very important work.
Thank you.
Thank you.